Welcome everyone to our webinar, Value-Based Pricing in Marketing and Sales Communication. Let me introduce you to our presenters. Our presenters today are Jay Manson, Leverage Point's VP of Sales, and Ed Arnold, VP of Products. Take it away, guys.
Thanks, Aaron. I would like to welcome you all to this third monthly webinar that we're having here at Leverage Point. Just want you all to know, whether you're in pricing, marketing, or sales, you're always welcome here. You're welcome if you believe in the power of pricing or if you're looking for answers. Everyone's welcome here at Leverage Point's virtual office.
Leverage Point is sponsoring this monthly webinar series, and we provide the only solution for value-based pricing. You can find out more about us at www.leveragepoint.com, where you'll find a copy of a recording of today's webinar, as well as previous webinars we've had and other resources. So be sure to check us out. Let's take a quick look at our agenda for today. We're going to start off by talking a little bit about the state of marketing and sales communications today, and then talk about some points of view that we have on price setting and price capture collaboration. And then we're going to be picking up a case study that we began in last month's webinar called Betting the Farm. It was a product development case study, but now we're going to look at it from the other side, the marketing and sales communications. And then we'll have a little Q&A at the end. So this is a 30-minute webinar. We cram a lot in 30 minutes, but we keep it short just so to value your time. And the way the Q&A works is this. There is a chat feature on the right-hand panel of your screen. At any time during the webinar, just write a question there to the organizer. Aaron, our colleague, will keep track of those questions, and when we reach the Q&A, we'll cover them in order. Okay? So that's the agenda.
So I think any of you who've been to Professional Pricing Society has seen a slide like this that talks about how powerful a lever pricing is for profit. And these numbers are based off of kind of assuming averages from the Fortune 500 company. But a small improvement in price has a significant impact on our margin and on our profit. Mm-hmm. And there's really very few other levers that we can pull that can have this kind of impact for us in the B2B markets. But there's also a scary dark side to this, if you will. Once prices start to go down, once street prices go down, it is very difficult to raise them. And the other piece is that generally what we find in B2B companies, that the three core pricing processes tend to be neglected. We look at those three pricing processes as price setting, price capture, and price management. And what really gets Ed and I excited to talk to you all today is we've got an opportunity to show you how our application helps improve the price setting process and the price capture process, and also allows collaboration across those processes so that you can really capture the profit that's laid out here in this slide.
So one theme that you hear a lot, Jay, in the Professional Pricing Society conferences that I've been to is what they consider to be the Great Wall of price optimization. By that I mean that you have a lot of great methodology around price setting on the marketing and pricing side of things, great theory, but where the breakdown generally occurs is on the execution side, on the price capture side through sales. And it happens for a variety of reasons, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a number of things. You know, our general belief is that everyone in an organization is trying to do the best that they can. And yet, what we often see that marketing sets a price based on the perception of how the offer is differentiated in the marketplace, but that is done separately from the process that sales goes through, and sales captures a price based on a customer account negotiation. And because the two constituents, if you will, inside the corporation are looking at it differently, they're not aligned, they don't communicate well, and there aren't natural ways to pull that together. So the result that we see is that there's an inconsistent message coming to the market, and particularly to customers. And that creates this downward pressure on street price. And with that downward pressure on street price, we see profits erode. What we want to show you today is how we helped an organization kind of tie those two parts of the organization together. And in this scenario specifically, there was real friction between marketing and sales. Mm-hmm. And that's not that unusual. Sales was fighting a highly competitive, in a highly competitive market, and marketing was trying to come out with new and innovative solutions to solve some of the problems of sales. And they didn't appreciate how each other came to solve the pricing and value-based pricing problem.
All right, well, before we get into that case study, we'd like to hear some of your experiences with pricing and communication. So we have our first polling question, which we're going to tee up. And the question is, when is price typically introduced during the sales process, during your sales process? So it's A, during the initial meeting, B, at the proposal stage, C, during negotiation, D, other, or E, really don't know. So choose when, at what stage is price typically introduced during your sales process. The poll is now open. We'll give you a moment, and we'll see what comes in.
This is usually the place where Ed puts me on the spot and asks me to guess.
So I'm being nice today.
But he's being nice today, so I'll just step into the abyss myself. So I would say it's going to be other. I think in most B2B transactions, price is introduced even before the initial meeting occurs. But it'll be interesting to see what the results look like.
Right. So let me look. We're going to give it another moment. We still got some polls coming in?
Yep.
Good.
We had a very interesting conversation with an enterprise software application where it was fascinating to see where internally the discussion was about when price was introduced, and then when we actually went out in the field and spent time with sales folks in the field, mm-hmm. where it actually was introduced. It's really interesting to see the difference, and it highlights the perception between marketing and sales.
All right, I think the results are in, and what do we see here? We're looking over on the side.
Yeah, we have most at the at proposal, 57%, 21% initial meeting, and roughly 7% for each of the others during negotiation, other, and don't know.
So at the proposal stage.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
But do you have any reasons why you think that might be the case?
Well, I think frequently when we think about the price, we're really thinking about that final piece that we present before to a customer. Mm-hmm. But when you typically look at a customer's buying process, they've got a lot of questions that they're going to ask around price early on.
Okay.
At early stages.
Well, we have another polling question. Why don't we tee that one up? And this one is, how does marketing communicate the customer-specific value proposition? Now, this is a multi-choice response. You can choose more than one. You can choose PowerPoint, spreadsheets, printed collateral, web-based tools, and E, other, which can include a lot of things. So choose all that apply in terms of how marketing communicates customer-specific value proposition. So it's more than just the price, just the overall value proposition. Now, I have a prediction here, Jay, based on my experience. And I am going to say PowerPoint. PowerPoint is the universal language of marketing. So we'll see how that stacks up.
That's interesting because Ed's a spreadsheet guy.
Yeah.
He spends his life in Excel.
Well, I spend my life in our application, Jay.
Oh, that's right.
So the poll is open. We'll give you another moment here. But these are all ways that clients, customers communicate their value proposition. I mean, obviously, I would expect a lot of web-based types of tools or web-based collateral as well. But I think PowerPoint is going to be our big one. So I'm looking to Aaron when he thinks it's ready to close. He's
give it another few seconds.
Another few seconds. And
the last few coming in.
Okay.
So that voice in the background is Aaron Miller. He is our right-hand man. Nothing would happen here without him.
That's true.
And so now we've got the results up, and I just wanted to announce that it was interesting. I was watching the results coming in, and the final tally is 65% for PowerPoint and printed collateral each. But before Ed made his comment, the percentage was way lower for PowerPoint.
I have a lot of friends out there. Thank you.
And so we have spreadsheets with 24%, other with 35%, and web-based tools with 59%.
All right.
Interesting. That's great.
Absolutely. All right. So just a couple other slides before we get into our example. So Jay.
Yeah. So let's just take a step back to talk a little bit about what we view value-based pricing is. And it's more than just setting a price. Value-based pricing is about putting together the complete solution that supports the price in the marketplace. And when we think about value, we think of it in kind of different tiers. The initial tier that we look at is the use value, and that's the total value that a customer gets from our solution. The next value band that we look at is economic value, and that is the unique value that a customer gets from your solution over and above a competitive solution. The next band is the perceived value. The perceived value is the value that a customer perceives of what your solution can do for them. It's very rare that we don't see perceived value being significantly less than true economic value. Perceived value and willingness to pay are closely linked. Now, customers' willingness to pay is what they're willing to pay based on that value, and it's always less than what the perceived value is. What's interesting, and if you read John Hogan's study, Building a World-Class Pricing Capability, John Hogan's one of the thought leaders in the space. He says that organizations that focus on economic value, that sell and price based on value and take a value-based approach, see a 24% margin improvement over peer organizations. And so when we're talking about value-based pricing, we're talking about it because it truly drives real economic impact and profit improvement for you.
And by the way, you can get a copy of that study from our website. Just go to our resources page. Very interesting study, benchmarking study on pricing. Okay, so there's one piece around value-based pricing that is about that communication, why we want to get there. It's about driving profit. But the other piece about value-based pricing is it really connects the price setting process with the price capture process. And when we think about the price setting process, what we're thinking about is there's a whole set of potential prices that get put into this funnel. And based on volume that we want, customer segment, financial requirements, customer sensitivity, we come down to a suggested price. That suggested price gets passed over to the sales organization, and that goes into the price capture process. And that suggested price goes through a reverse funnel, really, where there is offer configuration, there is discounting levels that are created, there is a negotiation that goes on beyond the discounting levels. There is a proposal that's delivered with a whole series of value elements attached to it and service elements attached to it. And from that spills out a whole set of actual prices. Now what we see is the price setting process is we're trying to drive to consistency around price so that it's easier to manage. But frequently what we see in the price capture process is the actual prices spread out all over the place. And what does that require? A whole price management process to support all these prices as they come out. What our solution allows you to do is start to tie these two elements together so that critical pricing information can pass from the price setting process into the price capture process. And we're going to spend a little time walking you through a real-life example of how that happens. Okay, so let's provide a little bit background as we get into this case study. So for those who watched last month's webinar, we did a case study called Betting the Farm. We were looking at this from a product development point of view. So this is sort of the sequel to that story. But just as a quick recap, this was a global enterprise customer service software company. They were about to release a next generation product. Lots of value hypotheses around what the product would deliver to its core segments, mainly initially around this idea of efficiency in terms of transaction time. And as many of us know, in the call center business, time is money. And on that basis was going to be the core value proposition. However, when we worked with this customer to develop the initial value model, we realized that those productivity gains weren't enough to really justify the additional value and even the switching costs of that system. So what we did was we sort of took a deeper dive and looked at the value model from a broader perspective. So this was the final picture of that model. But we're going to just go back into the tool and show this. So this is a look at our application. This is on the value modeling side here. And for those of you who are familiar with this value modeling approach, what we're showing here are all the positive differentiators in green. And the sum of these differentiators is the total differentiated value. Now, one of the things that came out of this case study was that the software was really the big play here, the big value play. And the details around that was that by using this new next generation system, they were able to eliminate a lot of third-party software costs. So that's where we ended up on the product development side. In other words, we were able to find that initial potential value that you talked about earlier. All right, but that's on the price, and that in turn was used to set the price. All right, so that's the first half of the story. The second half of the story is, well, how do you go out and capture that price? And for that, the way it works in our application is we go to the value communication side of the application. And in here, there's a lot of different piece parts in preparing a value model into a form of communications that customers can understand and salespeople can use to have that discussion. One of the first pieces is to talk about messaging. So in this application here, we put in value messages around each of those specific value drivers. Another important part is to really look at this in terms of the stakeholders' perspectives, right? So as you know, Jay, not all stakeholders or functional stakeholders in an organization have the same view of value.
That's right. And so there's two ways to look at this. One is providing the map for the salesperson to be able to talk about those elements of value that are important for the different constituents, whether it's a call center manager or an experienced agent. What are the points that we should identify? But the other piece is it's developing a map so that the salesperson can bring this information forward to procurement so that they can have a really effective conversation about how does our offer improve your business economically specifically.
Right, so in this particular case, we're talking about a large call center environment. Obviously, you're going to be talking to the call center manager. You're also going to be talking to experienced agents, new agents, the IT manager, and the HR and training manager. So as we said, this reduced third-party costs, that was a key part of the value play here. And that is something that IT managers really, really care about. Until this map was there, it was definitely someone that could have been overlooked.
And it definitely was. And what was interesting is a lot of this was the conversation that sales had with the account that made our customer aware of these third-party software costs.
Right. So what our application does is it ties these functional stakeholder messages to specific value drivers. And here you can put in the specific message that you'd want to communicate to that particular stakeholder. All right. Another part of the value communication process is tying together a lot of the marketing messages that marketing puts together anyway. I mean, they exist in all of those forms that we talked about earlier in the PowerPoints and the spreadsheets and on the web. But what we're doing here is we're tying that to the actual value model. And that's what's really unique about this. You're taking some of those marketing messages, your value proposition or your elevator speech, and you're tying that in to the specific economics here. You talk about the value messages, you talk about the customer pain points, and you talk about the value of each of those. All right. So once that's all done, then it's time to actually put that into a format that sales can use efficiently, because there's a lot of detail here. And one of the things that salespeople told us is that we want a summary of all the key points. We're not going to go through all of these tabs. Give us a one-page summary that we can begin to use. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump into a different browser window. And this is the same application, but looking at it from a sales perspective. Now, what you see here for a salesperson is not all the value modeling or price setting or whatnot. What they have are a value-based pricing communications package. That's what they want. That's what they want to use. Not only do they want to have access to that, but they want to be able to modify that basic value communication story to each unique customer situation. So what we have here is this basic model that we showed in our case study, modified for two specific accounts. Now, by the way, all of this information has been disguised to protect client confidentiality.
Protect the innocent.
Protect the innocent, protect ourselves. And so we're going to take a look at how one of these looks like for a specific account. Now, you'll notice here that the format here looks a little bit different from the previous screens that I showed. It is all summarized pretty much on one view here with a chart and the value proposition listed here. The stakeholders are available in this tab, but then you'll see the value messages and the key pain points. But what's happened here is that this particular value communications package or value-based pricing communications package has been modified for this particular customer situation. What does that mean? The values here are unique to this particular customer. So salesperson was able to change the agent cost, the number of agents, the call volume, all those things that are unique. Why is that important? Because that shows exactly how much value that this particular customer can expect.
And there's another beauty to this. We all understand in B2B markets that each customer has a unique value that they gain from our offer. But what we want is to create consistency around price while the value proposition changes. And what this allows the salesperson to do is to have a consistent price level as they're talking about that value communication and that value proposition.
Right.
So Ed, if you run to the bottom of the page, we can show folks what that summary slide looks like, that summary tab looks like. You can see the competitive price point laid there. The salesperson has the opportunity to change it, and you can see in the scenario they did change it, and there's a note associated with it.
Right.
And you also see that our price is fixed there. So the discussion isn't about changing our price, it's about changing those value elements. Gives us much more strength in the marketplace to hold on to price points.
Right, and not only now in this particular case, everything is expressed in terms of value per call, which is the metric that call center operations like to use. But then they're able to aggregate that and say, okay, well, given your volume, the value here is quite significant. So here it runs into the millions of dollars. In addition to that, then sales could actually provide some feedback, which marketing can get. And the other thing about this is because it's on the same web-based platform, marketing gets to see real-time how sales are adjusting this for particular customers, particular competitive situations, etc. So you have a flow back, a feedback loop back to marketing.
And from what we've heard from marketing folks who are using this application today, this is the holy grail. This is the critical information that customers are making decisions about when they're actually buying something. It's the critical information around the customer's perception of the competitive price. It's the critical information that helps us understand what really differentiates us in the marketplace and why a customer thinks it differentiates us. That's the critical stuff that allows us to be so much more effective.
All right. So let's go back to our slides and just sort of summarize the takeaways from this case.
Mm-hmm.
So Jay?
So I think part of what the case shows is that selling on value is not just about setting a value-based price, and it's not just about justifying that price. It's providing a whole communication package around value-based pricing so that a customer can develop a unique value proposition for your unique offer, and that the customer and the salesperson can work together. And when they work together to develop that unique value proposition, it can feed back to the organization itself. It's about value-based pricing is about delivering profits. It allows salespeople to leverage marketing's logic to change a customer's perception of value. And if we go back to John Hogan's piece that we mentioned earlier today, that's pretty significant. That could be 24% margin improvement over and above your competition. Salespeople is able to provide this feedback on a real-time basis, particularly competitive intelligence. And that comes back from the field to marketing, which means that marketing can get more effective. Marketing can refine the value-based prices. Marketing can refine the value communication and can create communication that's consistent across the market, which makes it so much easier for salespeople to move forward. So what does LeveragePoint deliver? We're the only application designed specifically around value-based pricing. We're designed specifically to address the price setting process and the price capture process, and to build the lines of communication across those two, so that product development, marketing, and price setting can all come together, can develop a value-based price that can be passed to sales in a format that sales can have a dialogue with customers, build a unique solution for that customer, and then pass that information back inside our four walls. It is this process that will drive profitability for you from 2011 on.
Okay. So we have some time for some questions, and at this point I'd like to ask Aaron if we had any.
Yeah, one just came in. Does your application link with CRM applications?
Yes, the answer is that it is designed to link into, but not replace CRM systems. There's a different purpose behind it, right?
Yeah, so what we see as CRM solutions, Salesforce automation solutions, they're really important applications to capture customer information. What we're really looking for is something different. What we're looking for is the information that will inform the price setting process and the price capture process. The other piece around our application is that we're providing critical content to sales, so that sales is only making fine-tune adjustments. They're not actually having to do a tremendous amount of input in order to capture benefit.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
Another question we have, can you use a price waterfall to communicate value and justify pricing?
That's a great question. When we look at the price waterfall, we really see it as bridging the gap between the price capture process and the price management process. Most of the elements, if you look at a price waterfall, are really after the price has already been captured in the marketplace. What are the things that we need to do to hold on to pocket margin? What the LeveragePoint solution is allowing you to do is capture a better price. And what our application is really doing, kind of the left-hand side of the waterfall, if you will, all those elements that build up to that price point. So what does that mean? It means when you hop into the price waterfall, you're starting ahead of the game. You're starting at a higher price. Your pocket margin is going to reflect that as well. Again, we see three key components around the pricing process in B2B environments: the price setting process, the price capture process, and the price management process. And our application is really focused on that price setting and price capture process, so that that price management process you can be even more effective in and more focused.
Okay, and finally, one person says, this looks like a lot of work. How long does it take to train a salesperson to sell on value-based pricing?
That's another great question. Ed and I were doing a pilot recently with one of our customers, and it was being done by the pricing and marketing folks, and they were all in the front of the room, and they've been building these value models all day, because once you get started on this, our application makes it really quickly to build the value-based price. And they turned to the VP of sales who was sitting in the back of the room, and he was playing on his BlackBerry doing typical sales ADD type stuff. And they said, don't worry, Jim, we're not going to bother your salespeople with this. It's going to take forever for them to get trained on it. And he went, time out. This is what I've been asking from you guys all along. I want to know the 4 or 5 things that make us better than the competition. I want you to quantify them. We can go win. We'll go win in the marketplace if you guys can provide it. No, I want this right away. And what we're seeing is that the adoption is like that. It is. These are the gems that salespeople are looking for in order to make them more effective in the field. It allows them to beat the competition. It allows them to capture more revenue. They get paid more. They want this information. So we're actually seeing the adoption is not a hurdle. There's kind of a thirst for it, if you will, in the marketplace.
Yeah, and on the marketing side, what we're doing, yes, there is some work in setting up these value models, but the nice thing about it is you only have to do it once, because then you iterate, you copy, you replicate, And in one of our client situations, I said, look, you're building the same spreadsheet over and over again. Think about that in a large enterprise. You're building more or less the same isolated spreadsheet dozens of times a year. Here you only build it once, and you got some consistency, and you have some structure.
Now, I don't want to embarrass Ed here, but Ed does produce these beautiful PowerPoint decks for me. And being a sales, not this one. And Ed produces these beautiful PowerPoint decks. And I saw earlier in your responses, everyone talked about how they use PowerPoint to communicate the value proposition. Ed would be embarrassed to see that I tend to use 2 or 3 slides in every presentation. And that's really what we're trying to do here, is identify those 2 or 3 slides. What are those 2 or 3 things that are really important? And what it does is, after a while, from a sales and marketing standpoint, Ed gets to see, based on how I'm using the application, what are the 3 slides. So he's trying to get more and more points on those 3 slides, I've noticed recently.
All right, well, that wraps up our time today. I just want to thank everyone for attending today, and just to remind everyone that this webinar recording, as well as some written case studies, including the one that we showed, are available from our website. We also have a product development survey that is open right now, and if you are involved in product development, I ask you to take it. It's just a 5-minute survey. You have the chance to win an autographed copy of the Strategy and Tactics of Pricing. And also to mark on your calendars, on March 23rd, we'll be doing our next webinar on rising commodity prices, which is a very hot topic now. So you want
especially if you look at the news of Libya today and where oil prices went today alone, it'll be very important.
And talk about how our clients are dealing with that.
And the other thing is, we've just shown you 3 or 4 slides of our application. If there's more information that you want, please feel free to give me a call at any time. My number's on the screen, and we'd be glad to walk you through a more detailed demonstration of what the application can do.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone, and have a great day.